Hi and welcome back. I'm Mark Turner from Turner's Painting School, and today in this lesson I'd like to give you an insight or a better understanding of what an imprimatura is in painting. So an imprimatura basically means, it's Italian, it means the colour beginning or the first colour. And it's made up of a pigment or a paint with a binder and with a dilutant. So first of all, let's look at the colour. In classical art, quite often the colour would be raw sienna, as this imprimatura here. The imprimatura is normally made up of earth colours, because they're very transparent. We can make modern equivalents of imprimatura in any colour. If you look onto the back of a tube of paint, it will tell you if it's transparent or opaque. So for instance, this one is opaque. I can still use it as an imprimatura, but I'd need to thin it down and put it on very, very thin. But it won't act quite the same as the raw sienna. Another traditional one is bistre. Now bistre, most people see and use the word sepia. Now sepia was used by boiling up cuttlefish to make the colour, and not every artist had cuttlefish to boil up, but most artists had a stove in their studio to keep them warm, and they would burn wood. If they raked out the chimney when the weather got warmer, they could clean that soot and make it into a paint, and that would be called bistre, like this here. Another common colour was red iron oxide, commonly known as Venetian red. You'll see mostly on paintings in museums that the landscapes in general had the raw sienna colour on them. You'll see many bistre, and sometimes they are sepia imprimaturas, and with portraits very often they use the Venetian red. So let's have a look. The imprimatura classical would be made up of a colour. We'll be using the raw sienna, and I'm going to put about a pea of raw sienna on my palette. They would use a binder. We're going to use an oil medium, which could be a mix of linseed oil and terps, or just pure linseed oil, or zest it or something like that. We're going to put that on the palette underneath our paint, and a dilutant, something to make it thin and runny, and I'm going to use a good splash of spirit. It could be odourless mineral spirit. If you were working with acrylics, that would be water. I'm going to put that, quite a lot of that, and mix that together. I'm going to mix the paint into my medium and spirit, so it's very, very wet. Then I would get a cloth and scrunch that up in my hands. I don't want that cloth to be dangling, because what might happen is it might dip into the paint and end up everywhere. So the cloth needs to be scrunched up. I would then, I'm going to do it on this support here, place it on the support and straight away start to rub that in. If I leave that too long, I'll end up with lines all over, and you can see already that filter that I'm creating. Now, the traditional thin coats of paint like this, they would build up, and the more coats you build, the darker it gets. You could also rub back, take a little bit of the paint off and make it thinner. just going to turn this support over so I can carry on a little bit easier. And you can see this doesn't take more than a couple of minutes. And just spread that all the way in. I've got a little bit of charcoal on my support there, and it's actually showing through. That's how thin this paint is. And this is what we call an indirect method of painting. An indirect method of painting is where you're putting very, very thin glazing coats of paint and building them up wet on top of dry. So this is going straight over the top of my gesso ground and creating my first colour beginning, my first filter of paint. And there you have it. Now, some people like to do a sketch and then put the imprimatura over the top. It seals the sketch behind. I personally don't do that. I sketch on top. And quite often I would sketch with this wet mix that I've got. So I'm just going to show you that you can do that. So quite easily we can sketch onto that. And if we don't like what we've got there, we can simply rub it off. Now, I need this to dry. It's actually starting to dry already, and I've only just done it. But if I leave that for a couple of hours, it'll be absolutely dry, and it will give me that mid-tone ready to continue with my art. One thing you mustn't get confused about, people think that underpaintings are imprimaturas. Here's an underpainting that I've started to do of my granddaughter using the bistra. And what I've done is I've put the imprimatura all over, I've wiped back the white areas, and then when it's dry I've gone back in with further coats to make it darker, to make the areas darker. This is an underpainting, not an imprimatura. This is an imprimatura. Okay, so the impressionist painted in a different manner. The impressionist painted in a direct manner. A direct manner means thick paint directly onto the support. But they would still put an imprimatura onto their support. But they weren't interested in the light passing through this as a classical method and bouncing back. They were more interested in toning down the canvas so that when you took it outside, the bright white didn't hurt your eyes. So they would tend to use a grey or a bluish colour all over the canvas, tone it down before you start to paint. That is a direct method. The classical style is called an indirect method, where you're after the light passing through the paint and bouncing back and create this dynamic look, as in these. Okay, we've covered that. We know how to do it. Remember to keep your cloth from dangling. And what we're going to be looking at next is putting our paints onto a palette and creating a colour wheel. So I hope this has helped you understand imprimatura, and I look forward to taking you on a journey of colour in our next meeting. So for now, Mark Turner from Turner's Painting School, take care, stay safe and look after each other. Bye.